Salesforce and Anthropic just announced Claudeforce. And my raw reaction is pretty simple. This could be massive. Not just interesting, not just another AI-related press release. Potentially massive. But I also want to say the quiet part out loud right away. If your Salesforce org is already a mess, plugging Claude into it will not magically make your business smarter. It might just give you really bad recommendations a lot faster, with more confidence, and with much better grammar. And that is the tension here, because I am genuinely excited about this announcement. I think the direction is real. I think AI becoming the interface to enterprise systems is where a lot of this is heading. But I've also spent enough time inside real Salesforce orgs, not demo orgs, not keynote orgs, not perfectly curated product marketing environments, to know that the promise of AI depends heavily on the quality of the system underneath it. So if you are a business leader looking at this announcement and thinking, could this finally make Salesforce useful for our organization? This video is for you. And if you're a Salesforce professional watching leadership get all excited about AI while you are still fighting duplicate records and stale opportunities, ignored tasks, unclear record ownership, broken reporting, and mystery integrations, this video is definitely for you too. Because Claudeforce is exciting, but it also raises a much bigger question. Is your Salesforce org actually trusted enough for AI to reason from? That is the question that I think business leaders need to be asking right now. Not just, when can we buy this? Not just, what features will it include? Not just, will this replace dashboards? The real question is, if Claude looked at your Salesforce organization today, would it be looking at your actual business, or just the messy leftovers of what your business has accumulated over the last 5, 10, 15 years? Here's why I'm genuinely excited. Let me start with the optimistic part, because it's real. The exciting part of Claudeforce is not simply that Claude can connect to Salesforce. We already live in a world where AI tools can connect to all sorts of apps, and it's very damn cool. You can connect tools like ChatGPT to Canva, to Google Drive, to your Gmail, and the same for pretty much every other LLM out there. You could do the same thing for Claude. You can connect different apps to Notion AI, which, by the way, I'm a huge fan of, and I'm not going to go off on that topic. I can talk forever about my love for Notion and Notion AI. But back to our topic at hand. The basic idea is, let the AI access another system, and that is not new anymore. What's more interesting here is the possibility that Claude can reason across your Salesforce data, business logic, workflow, context, customer history, pipeline activity, and Slack conversations, and email context, and then help users take appropriate action. That is a very different way of interacting with enterprise software. For years, people have had to hunt through dashboards, reports, list views, account records, opportunity notes, case comments, inboxes, Slack threads, spreadsheets, and meeting notes just to answer some basic operational questions. Questions like, where do I need to pay attention? Which deal is actually at risk? Which customer has gone quiet on us? Which customer support issue is about to become a much bigger problem? Which accounts need follow-up? which donor, patient, client, policyholder, household, partner, or provider is falling through the cracks. And if Claudeforce gets even part of that right, that is a big deal. For a business leader, this could mean faster visibility into what is actually happening across the business. For a sales leader, it could mean better pipeline judgment. For a customer support leader, it could mean better case context. For insurance and financial services teams, it could mean better visibility across policies and renewals and accounts and opportunities and referrals and compliance-sensitive interactions. For healthcare and home healthcare organizations, it could mean better coordination around patients and providers and referrals and cases and follow-up. For nonprofits, it means a better understanding of donors and households and campaigns and programs, volunteers and relationship history. That is not small. If Salesforce becomes less of a place where people manually search for answers and more of the operating layer that AI can reason through and act on safely and reliably, that could change a lot. So yes, I am very, very excited about this. I want this to work. I really do. But that is exactly why I think the readiness conversation matters. So let's talk about the uncomfortable truth that most people refuse to say out loud. Here's the line I keep coming back to. AI will not make Salesforce your source of truth. It will reveal whether Salesforce already is. That is the whole thing. If your Salesforce org is clean, trusted, governed, current, and actually used by the business, Claudeforce could be incredibly powerful. In other words, if you currently run your pipeline reviews, pull customer lists, and track your marketing initiatives and ROI on marketing exclusively through Salesforce, you're golden. But if Salesforce is already the place where old records go to die, if stale integrations keep dumping junk into the org and nobody has the time or patience to disconnect it and get rid of the crap, if automations still create tasks that everyone ignores from automation created years ago, if opportunities are months out of date, and you still have open opportunities for people that left your company 5 years ago, if cases are assigned to queues that nobody monitors, or people who are no longer part of the customer support team, if record ownership is unclear, if your dashboards look official, but everyone on the team still opens up a spreadsheet when the meeting gets serious, then this shiny new integration between Salesforce and Claude will not help you. Claude will not be looking at your business. It will be looking at a part of your business that made it into Salesforce, crap and all. And those are not the same thing. That distinction matters because there is a huge difference between Claude understands our business and Claude has access to the crappy, outdated, half-baked records that we happen to have in Salesforce. That's a big deal. Let's talk about the private spreadsheet problem. Here's the scene that I see all the time. Leadership says, Salesforce is our source of truth. Everybody nods. The dashboard goes up on the screen during a sales pipeline review. The pipeline report, it's open. The renewal report is open. The service dashboard is open. The campaign attribution dashboard is open on the big screen. And then 5 minutes into the meeting, someone says that number isn't right. And then it starts. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else has another spreadsheet. Sales has one version, finance has another, operations has a third, customer service has a separate tracker that someone considered temporary 2 years ago, and they're still using it. The admin is trying to explain where the report logic came from. The executive is trying to figure out which number to trust. And now the meeting is not about the business anymore. The meeting is about which version of reality everyone is willing to believe. That is not a dashboard problem yet. That is a trust problem. And if you add AI on top of that, you have not solved the trust problem. You may have just made the wrong version of reality easier for the AI to summarize. That's the part that I think executives need to sit with. If your team trusts the spreadsheet more than Salesforce, the spreadsheet is not automatically the enemy. Sometimes the spreadsheet is evidence. It is evidence that Salesforce did not answer a real operational need, or Salesforce became too slow, or too confusing, or too cluttered, or too untrusted, or maybe the business process changed and Salesforce never caught up, or leadership kept saying Salesforce is the source of truth, while still allowing every manager to maintain a private version of the truth in the form of another spreadsheet. That is not an AI problem. That is an operating model problem. And Claudeforce will not magically solve that either. It might expose it. It might accelerate it. It might make it impossible to ignore, but it will not fix it just by existing. While we're on the topic of bad data, I do not just mean old phone numbers. That's usually where people go first. They hear bad data and they think missing email address, bad phone numbers, old job titles, blank fields, and yes, all of that matters. That's real. But in Salesforce, bad data quality is much bigger than inaccurate fields. Bad data is also bad context. It is accounts owned by the wrong people, contacts that nobody trusts, opportunities that have not been updated in months, opportunities sitting in stages that no longer reflect reality, cases assigned to queues that nobody monitors, case ownership that doesn't match the actual service process. How about opportunity teams that do not reflect who's actually involved in the opportunity? Or case teams that do not actually reflect who's responsible for the customer support tickets? How about automated tasks that keep getting created every day that everybody ignores? How about follow-up reminders that became noise that everybody ignores? Or fields that were added for one manager 5 years ago and now nobody knows what they mean? Pick lists that have values that nobody uses, required fields that people fill in garbage just to be able to save the record, or custom objects that were built for a process that died 3 years ago, but they're still sitting there, confusing users and cluttering the data model. And integrations. This one matters. There are a lot of Salesforce orgs where integrations are still feeding crappy data into Salesforce long after the business has stopped caring about that data. The integration was built, the vendor changed, the process changed, the team changed, the original owner left, but the data still keeps coming into Salesforce. Records keep getting created, fields keep getting updated, tasks keep appearing, activities keep syncing, campaigns keep getting touched, and everyone just learns to ignore it. Now, that is not harmless. That is not just clutter. That becomes the environment that AI is trying to reason from. And if Claude is looking at all of that, it might not know what is real and what is cluttered junk. That is the danger. Claude might be brilliant, but if you feed it crap, do not be surprised when it gives you crappy recommendations and insights. And crappy recommendations are dangerous because they sound clean, they sound confident, they sound executive ready, they might even sound strategic. But underneath it, it might be built on records that nobody owns, fields that nobody trusts, automations that nobody monitors, integrations that nobody governs, and definitions that leadership never agreed on. That is where AI can become dangerous. Not because it fails in ways that are obvious, because it can be convincingly wrong. The same way an overly confident teenager might scold their parents about how to manage their lives because the teenager watched a few TikTok videos and now considers themselves an expert. And convincingly wrong is worse than obviously broken. Obviously broken gets questioned. Convincingly wrong gets forwarded to senior leadership. So if you're the business executive, here's how I would think about this. Do not start with, how do we get Claudeforce? Start with, would I trust an AI to make recommendations based on what is currently in our Salesforce? That is the question. Would you trust it? Would you trust it to tell you which deal is at risk? Would you trust it to summarize customer health? Would you trust it to identify operational bottlenecks? Would you trust it to recommend next steps on an account? Would you trust it to prioritize customer support cases? Would you trust it to explain pipeline movement? Would you trust it to identify churn risk? Would you trust it to tell your team what to do next? And if the honest answer is no, not really, then your next move is not AI. Your next move is diagnosis. Because you may not have a Salesforce feature problem. You might have a trust problem. You might have a data ownership problem. You might have a process definition problem, or you might have a governance problem, or maybe it's even a leadership behavior problem. You might have a shadow system problem or a technical debt problem. And if you don't know which one it is, adding AI on top of it is premature. That doesn't mean that you should ignore Claudeforce. It means you should use this waiting period wisely. Because we probably have some time. We do not know as of today when the rollout is actually going to happen. We do not know the real feature set of what's included. We do not know today about the pricing. We do not know the limitations of this feature, product, service. We do not know if these AI features will be compliant with your specific industry requirements, whether it's financial services or healthcare, education, or any other industry. We do not know what will be generally available, what will be pilot only, what will require additional products, or maybe specific Salesforce additions. We don't know what will require a level of data readiness that most companies do not currently have. So instead of waiting passively, use the time. Clean your org. Clarify data ownership and process ownership. Audit the data. Figure out where the real business process lives. Because if Claudeforce is even half as useful as the announcement suggests, the companies that benefit first might not be the companies that get access first. They might be the companies that are ready when access arrives. And if you're the Salesforce admin watching this, I think you probably already feel this. You're not against AI. You're not against innovation. You're not against using better tools. You're probably not even against Claudeforce. You might be excited about it too. But you also know what is sitting underneath the surface. You know the duplicate accounts that are still there. You know the opportunity stages that are not being consistently used. You know the case processes are actually different depending on which team touches it. You know the integration that nobody wants to talk about that's still creating records in the background. You know the automation stack has inherited logic from 3 different eras of the business. You know the just add a field is how an org slowly becomes unreliable. You know that just automate it is dangerous when nobody owns the business rule. And now leadership hears AI inside of Salesforce, and suddenly everyone wants to move faster. This is where the admin needs language, not defensive language, not no, we can't, not this is too complicated, not the data is bad in a vague way. The better language is, before we let AI give recommendations based on our data in Salesforce, we need to decide whether Salesforce reflects the business accurately enough to trust the recommendations. That is a much stronger sentence. Or this is not an AI blocker. This is an AI readiness issue. Or if we add AI before we clean up the data ownership, the data quality, and the stale automation, we might scale confusion instead of business intelligence. That is the admin to COO translation. Because the issue is not that the admin is being negative. The issue is that the admin might be seeing the foundational risk before leadership does. And that is exactly the kind of operator insight companies need right now. Admins need to speak up. This matters even more in industries like insurance, financial services, healthcare, home healthcare, and nonprofits. Because in those environments, Salesforce is often not just a sales database. It might be tracking policies, renewals, households, referrals, providers, donors, campaigns, benefits, claims, cases, care coordination, service delivery, compliance-sensitive interactions, long-running relationship history. And in those environments, bad data is not just annoying, it can create real operational risk. If the wrong person owns the account, the follow-up might not happen. If the case is assigned to the wrong queue, the customer or the patient might wait longer than is acceptable. If the opportunity teams are wrong, nobody knows who's actually responsible. If campaign attribution is unreliable, leadership might fund the wrong growth activity. If referral data is stale, teams might chase the wrong relationships. If donor history is incomplete, nonprofit teams might misunderstand the relationship. If healthcare or home healthcare workflows are fragmented across Salesforce, email, spreadsheets, and human memory, the AI might only see part of the truth. And again, this is the danger. The answer might sound reasonable. It might sound polished. It might sound useful. But if the foundation is wrong, the confidence becomes a liability. So when I hear Claudeforce, I do not just think that is cool. I also think this could be incredible for organizations that have invested in data trust, governance, process clarity, and Salesforce hygiene. And it could be a very expensive mirror for organizations that have avoided those things. Now, I must say, there's also another reason why I'm cautious. And this is where I want to be fair but honest. I've seen Salesforce announcements before. Salesforce has a long history of announcing the destination before the average customer can actually drive the road. That does not mean that the destination is fake. It does not mean that the product will not matter, but it does mean that business leaders need to separate keynote energy from implementation reality. Lightning experience is the example that I keep coming back to. And you might also have PTSD on this if you've been in the Salesforce ecosystem long enough. The vision was right. The direction was great. Eventually, Lightning became the Salesforce experience. But early on, when they first announced it's live, it's available now, today, it was limited. I'll even use the phrase half-baked. Some objects worked. Some features did not. Some teams had to keep switching back and forth for years. Admins had to explain why the thing that looked so polished in the presentation, on the YouTube video, on the webinar at Dreamforce was not fully usable for their org yet. There was this awkward hybrid period where the future was technically here, but only in pieces. And that is normal with big platform shifts. But it matters because a business executive might hear the announcement and think, great, this solves the Salesforce problem. And an admin might hear the same announcement and think, okay, but what will actually work in our org with our addition and our data model and our permissions and our integrations and our customizations and our compliance needs and our users and all of the crap that nobody wants to clean up. Both reactions are valid. The vision can be right, and the first usable version can still be narrow and incredibly helpful. So my caution is not this is hype. My caution is do not confuse the announcement with the implementation curve. There will be a curve. There always is. And the organizations that use the curve well will be the ones preparing their Salesforce foundation now. And then there's the pricing. None of us know. So let me be very clear. This is speculation, but let's be adults. Salesforce and Anthropic are both for-profit companies. Newsflash, this partnership exists because both companies see a major revenue opportunity. I would love to be wrong, but I doubt this is going to be free or inexpensive. If pricing is based on seats, AI usage, tokens, actions, premium packaging, Salesforce editions, Anthropic consumption, or some delightful combination of all of the above, a lot of teams might be excited right up until the moment procurement sees the bill. And that makes readiness even more important. Because the worst move is to wait, then get access, see the price, and only then realize that your Salesforce org is too messy to justify the spend. Imagine that conversation. Leadership is excited. The vendor conversation starts. The pricing is significant. The team says, okay, let's evaluate this. And then someone finally asks, do we actually trust the data enough for this to work? That question should not happen at the end. That question should happen now. Because if you are going to spend real money on AI layered over your Salesforce, you need to know whether your Salesforce is a reliable operating layer or a very expensive archive of old crap. So here's the fake fix that I want to call out. Let's add AI to Salesforce so that people can finally use it. Be careful with that. AI can improve the interface. AI can reduce friction. AI can make information easier to retrieve. I am a huge fan of AI. AI can help users move faster, but AI does not automatically solve the reason people avoided Salesforce in the first place. If users avoid Salesforce because the system is slow, cluttered, punitive, irrelevant, outdated, or untrusted, AI may help around the edges, but it might not fix the root issue. If managers still accept spreadsheet updates, Salesforce is optional. If executives do not use Salesforce dashboards and reports when decisions get serious, Salesforce is optional. If users enter data and never get value back, Salesforce is a tax. If automations create noise, users will ignore the noise. If reports are not trusted, AI summaries of those reports will not create trust. That is why I keep coming back to the same point. AI does not fix a CRM that your business already distrusts. It makes the distrust harder to ignore. So here's the simple test I would use before adding AI to Salesforce. 5 questions. Here's question 1. Where does the real version of the truth live today? Not where is it supposed to live? Where does it actually live? Is it Salesforce? A spreadsheet? A Slack thread? A manager's private tracker? Somebody's inbox? A weekly meeting? Someone's memory? Is it written on a whiteboard in Joe's office? If it's going to be accessible through Claudeforce, you're good. But otherwise, you have a lot of work to do. Question 2. Which Salesforce records do people quietly ignore? Is it tasks, old opportunities, cases, campaign members, activities, leads, maybe custom objects that everyone forgot about, but they're still there, integration created records? If everyone has learned to ignore certain records, or, like the 4 different industry fields that are sitting on the account object, AI might not know what to ignore. And you're likely going to pay heavily for the AI to review and then discard that irrelevant crap buried in your Salesforce system today. That makes it even more expensive. Question 3. Which automations or integrations are creating noise, not value, noise? The emails that nobody reads, the tasks that nobody completes, the records that nobody owns, the updates that nobody trusts, the synchronizations that nobody monitors. Question 4. Who owns data quality? Not technically, actually. Who owns account accuracy, contact quality, opportunity, hygiene, case ownership, team assignments, lifecycle definitions? How about stage movement, when an opportunity is supposed to move from one stage to the next? Or close dates? Does everyone not have the same understanding of what they mean? How about campaign attribution? If the answer is the admin, oh, you should be very careful. The admin might maintain the system, but the business owns the truth. Question 5. When the meeting gets serious, do business leaders just use Salesforce, or do they open a spreadsheet? That is the test, because the system of record might not be the system that you pay for. It's the system that people trust when the meeting gets serious. If the system that people trust is not Salesforce, then adding AI to Salesforce will not magically change the center of gravity. You have to earn that trust back. So, what should you do right now? Do not wait passively. And do not start by asking, when can we buy Claudeforce? Start by asking, what would need to be true in our Salesforce org for AI to produce useful, trustworthy recommendations? Then work backward. Find those private spreadsheets, not to shame people, to understand what Salesforce is failing to provide. Clean up the duplicate records, not because duplicates are ugly, they are, but because duplicates break context. Fix ownership access, accounts, contacts, opportunities, and cases, not because ownership fields should look tidy, because the AI needs to know who is responsible. Review opportunity teams and case teams, not because they're nice to have fields, because that's what tells the system how work actually happens and who needs to be involved. Turn off automations that create records that nobody uses, because ignored automation, it's not efficiency, it's automated clutter. Review the integrations that keep pushing unnecessary data into your Salesforce, because stale integrations create false context. Retire the custom objects that no longer support your business process as it exists today, because every irrelevant custom object is another place for confusion to hide, and the AI will find it. Clarify dashboard definitions, because a dashboard can calculate correctly and still be useless if leadership disagrees about the meaning. Document your business rules, because if you cannot document the logic, you cannot defend the recommendations. And give your Salesforce team the authority to say, this is not an AI problem yet. This is a data trust problem. That sentence might save you a lot of money. So, my raw take, Claudeforce could be massive. I think this direction is real. I can't remember the last time I got so excited about a Salesforce announcement. I think the idea of AI reasoning across Salesforce and workflows and customer context and governed business action is genuinely exciting. I want to see this work. I really do. But the companies that benefit first are not going to be the ones that get access first. It's going to be the companies that are ready. Their data quality is ready when access arrives. And readiness does not start with AI. It starts with trust. Trusting the data, trusting the process, trusting record ownership. Who owns what? It's also about governance trust and dashboard trust and trust by the users, because AI will not make Salesforce your source of truth. It will reveal whether Salesforce already is. So yes, get excited. Go watch the announcement if you haven't already. Follow the rollout. I can't wait to see the additional announcements that they make about this new product feature, whatever they're going to call it. Ask hard questions about the features, the limitations, the security, governance, the cost, and availability. But use this waiting period wisely. Clean your Salesforce org. And by the way, if you need help with that, my team and I can help. Because if your Salesforce org is full of clutter, junk, stale data, ignored automation, duplicate records, unclear ownership, unnecessary integrations, and custom objects nobody uses, Claudeforce might just be an expensive AI waste of time and money. It might become a very expensive mirror, and I want to help you avoid that. Because look, sometimes that mirror is useful, but only if you're willing to look at what it's showing you. I'm curious how other Salesforce professionals and customers are reading this latest announcement. Do you think Claudeforce is a massive shift? Do you think it's just an overhyped announcement? Or both? And if you had 6 months before AI touched your Salesforce org, what would you clean up first?